It is Friday, March 12th, 2021, and the time is 9:35, and we will call this meeting of P-CCS Parent Council to order. I would like to welcome all of our parents, caregivers, and families of our P-CCS students, those who have chosen to spend your valuable time with us here today in our Zoom meeting. But I would also like to welcome those who are tuning in later and watching us over our P-CCS official YouTube channel. Thank you all for spending your time with us today. My name is Judy Hart, and I'm serving as this year's Parent Council President. And I want to introduce a few of my fellow board members as well. I think we have on the call here, Pam Cornell-Allen. Are you there, Pam?
Yep, I'm here. Good morning, everyone. My name is Pam Cornell-Allen, and I am serving as the Vice President.
Thank you. And then we have our corresponding secretary. I'm sorry, our membership coordinator.
Yeah, Andrea Schultz. I am the membership coordinator. Thanks for joining us.
Hi. Oops, sorry.
Go ahead. And our corresponding secretary.
Hi, my name is Sophia Salim, and I'm the corresponding secretary for this year for the Parent Council.
Thank you very much. I want to thank my fellow board members that, throughout this year. They have been an absolute rock and just a wonderful group to work with during this very unprecedented year that we are getting through, that we are planning and communicating through. So I appreciate and value them very much. I want, for those of you who are tuning in who are not familiar with our P-CCS Parent Council organization, we are a district organization. We are parents and caregivers of P-CCS students. Our group is an organization which completely focuses on bridging communication between our families of our P-CCS students and the staff and administration of our district. I would definitely say that I have always valued our meetings. Well before I was part of the board, I always knew that there was just something very energizing and special about these meetings that I just enjoyed and valued. But during this past year, I have valued it even more because I believe that communication between the district and our families is even more critical and valued, I think, by our families as well as by our district. So I want to thank our district staff and administrators today who are on our call. Mr. Nick Brandon, who's our Director of Communication and Marketing, who is our liaison and part of our bridge of communication. I know that our Superintendent, Monica Merritt, is very much part of that communication. And a lot of our speakers today, who I will introduce in just a moment. Just a few details, kind of in-house business items that we want to take care of today before we get to the rest of our meeting. Number one, now that you've met our board members, I do want to announce and open today for nominations. Let you all know that we are looking for people, volunteers who would be interested in serving as our board members for the upcoming fall of 2021-22 school year. And so if you are someone who has enjoyed, been a representative for your school in our Parent Council organization, and you've enjoyed our meetings and you're interested in serving on our board, we have the positions of President, Vice President, corresponding secretary, recording secretary, as well as our membership coordinator, which may be open this coming school year. We have a couple of our board members who are retiring, who have seniors. I know Sophia has a senior student and will no longer have a student at P-CCS, as well as other openings. We've been looking to fill our recording secretary for some time. So please email us at parentcouncil@pccsk12.com, and definitely I'll be happy to give you any information about that. And next meeting, we will also talk in more detail about which each of those positions has to offer and what the details are amongst them. We also have the minutes from our last regular meeting. During this school year, since it has been like no other, I don't think we can say that enough. Our last regular meeting occurred on December 4th. We did have during January meetings amongst some of our representatives in our board for the process of the student and graduate profile, which we met for. And in February, we had our town hall, which have replaced a couple of our regular meetings during the school year, so that we have opened it up for more communication and just open communication amongst the district rather than having planned speakers. We've opened it up to parents' questions and parents' commentary during this time to go directly to our district. But our last regular meeting occurred December 4th, and I would like to draw everyone's attention to the December minutes. I will send everyone who's on the meeting out a copy of these December 4th meetings, as well as posting them on our website. And if I could get a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second for this approval of the December 4th minutes?
I will second it.
Thank you, Sophia. Let the record show that Andrea Schultz moved to approve the minutes and Sophia Salim gave a second. We will put those into our archive with a vote of our board. So if I know on Zoom it's interesting to do this, but we can have an approval of the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. All opposed? Thank you very much. And we will put those December 4th meeting minutes into our parent council archive there. Thank you very much. So with those details behind us, I would like to ask if you are here in the Zoom meeting, or if you are viewing as a parent council representative and you are watching this meeting as a representative of parent council, if you could please email us both your name as well as the school or schools that you are representing. We will record that for our today's March 12th attendance record for the meetings, and that would help us out a great deal. So only those who are watching this as a parent council representative, and it's your job to present that or report back to your school. We would appreciate it if you could email us your name and your school or your schools that you represent. So we would appreciate that for attendance. So with that, we won't do a verbal attendance this morning. So with those details behind us, one of the things that we are going to be focusing on today, since as parents, it's kind of like the task of walking and chewing gum right now. We have the focus on going back to school and this in the moment, all of these details as parents, which we are focusing on with the health and safety of our students. We're kind of getting back to regular business now, and it's an interesting task of, what would we normally be focusing on this year? And one of the things around this time of the year is our middle schoolers are looking to transition to the high school next year. I know a couple of us having 8th graders on this board know that our 8th graders have actually gone through the process of choosing their classes next year to go to the park. But there's also some other details, and there's also a lot more opportunity open for them to prepare for next year. So our next speaker, who we greatly appreciate her spending her time with us today, is a veteran of this topic, and Barb Lehman, who's the guidance counselor at Canton High School, is going to talk to us today about some of our opportunities for both extracurricular and other details for our 8th graders. Up and coming is our P-CCS extravaganza and some other groups that have things offered to our 8th graders. So thank you very much, Barb.
Oh, happy to join you. So let me start by saying welcome. We're excited about the new freshman class coming in gosh, months from now. It seems to go by so quickly, but we are excited about that, and we know it's definitely a transition that has some excitement and some anxiety and fear and happiness, so all mixed together. There's a lot of things that we really focus on, and as a counseling department, I want to say that our 9th grade focus really is about connecting to the high school. So what starts off for our kids and they transition to the park is that it has an opportunity. First is we had our curriculum night in February talking about academics and beginning that process. And I know kids in the public schools and in private schools that are coming to the park are working on course selection now as we speak. But also what came out recently was the extravaganza. And as a former coach and absolutely loving the benefits of what it means to be part of a team or a program or an activities or a club. It's so valuable to our kids to make those connections, finding a group of kids that really like what you enjoy and being part of that and having that smaller connection from here at the park. So I would really encourage, the email was sent out some time ago to incoming families that for kids to sign up, if they're incoming 9th graders, to sign up. A Google form was shared. I know it's currently on the athletic websites. That will also get them to fill that out and connect with their coaches. The coaches are on March 18th setting up appointments or Zoom meetings with the new kids to kind of maybe fill them in about how tryouts occur, when does it start, what do they need to have, having a sports physical, kind of what the outline of a season might be. If your child has not filled that out, what I would recommend is going on to the athletics website for the school they are to attend. There is a list of the coaches and the clubs and activities in which they can email directly to that person in charge, and they can then set up an appointment or a Zoom meeting. Maybe it's March 18th or at a later time, but clearly there's more information that continues to come out. The one thing I would encourage is a lot of our athletic teams and some of the clubs begin as early as August. So you definitely want to be in town starting like August 1st or August 7th. Most of the sports teams will be beginning at that time and having tryouts for the fall sports. There are winter sports that will occur and spring sports, and those occur usually in November around Thanksgiving. They start for the winter, and the spring sports start in March. So our kids actually are beginning this coming Monday for our spring sports this year. But again, there's a lot of information on the website, and I would definitely connect with one of the clubs or the activity directors just to get some more information and share that out. As we meet with our 9th graders in the fall as the counseling department, again, our focus is to try and get them connected, to find an area of career interest or just a passion or a hobby or a talent, and get them connected so they start to meet another group of students that takes a large space into a very small space and makes that connection for them. As we move to the fall, one thing that's really important, and National Honor Society is really great about this. They've done this a few times, and they've held Saturday tour days. And I'm expecting that they'll do the same thing in the fall, and that will be shared out usually in the beginning of August. But they offer their services, the upperclassmen, juniors, and seniors that have earned the right to be part of the National Honor Society based on their academic achievement and community service that they do for our area. But they work with the kids and take them around campus, showing them the ins and outs of where certain hallways are and how do you get in one door and exit another. They'll talk about where do you go stand in line for lunch. They'll have those tours for kids to be able to kind of explain and give them kind of another view. I would also say in normal years, I would say, come and enjoy an event that's happening this spring. Go to a baseball game, check out the ends of the basketball tournaments or the games that are being played, a soccer game, just to get a feel of campus. And again, this is a little different as we move into the spring, but there will be more and more events on campus. And I encourage you to just, the more you're here, the more you'll feel comfortable. So along with National Honor Society, our kids have the opportunity in years past to come the day they're scheduled to pick up and get their picture taken for the student ID as well as their schedule. And we really encourage kids to plan to spend a couple of hours, not only to pick up their textbooks and make sure that they have those and ready to go, but really walk the halls. Start from the bus loop that sits between just south of Salem and between Canton and Plymouth. But students get off the bus there, and we want them to walk to their locker or walk to their first hour, then walk to their second hour, and do that a couple of times. We also make sure that, and the National Honor Society will point this out, there's a lot of signs that we don't always see when we're nervous and it's that first day of school. So we want to encourage the kids just to be aware of their surroundings and really walk that path a couple of times. It changes, of course, when all of the kids are here on campus. But again, once you have an idea and you've practiced it a few times, it definitely helps. I will tell you, we've never seen so many juniors and seniors a little confused coming back in these last few weeks. They really had no idea either. And that's one thing that we stress to our incoming ninth graders is everybody's going in a new path this year. Everybody's finding a new route. Everybody's going to a new classroom, finding a new direction. So we're all in this together. And a lot of the time for that first full week, there's a lot of staff outside helping and supporting kids to find their place. But the more you're on campus, the more you walk around and find it, before long, it's going to be easy peasy and you'll have no issues. I will say more than likely, parents, it's you that tend to be a little bit more kind of concerned about it, and the kids, they work it out and they find their way. So it's really great for them. That's pretty much where we're at. Again, though, we're really excited, and usually in the fall, there's a couple of activities that are pretty much to guide ninth graders and get involved again with clubs and activities. So again, make sure you're on the serve list for the emails, because I know there's a lot of information that comes out about upcoming events and so forth. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there are some.
Is there anyone on the call who would like to ask Barb a question about any of the extracurriculars or any of the processes that she talked about? Because I know there's a lot of us looking at this group who do have, in fact, eighth graders who will be moving up to the high school next year.
That is exciting.
Yeah, I have a quick question. I have an incoming ninth grader next year, and gosh, it's like pulling teeth trying to get her to be interested in joining a club or activity. And I just didn't know if you had any pointers other than us trying as parents to push her. I was glad to hear that maybe you guys maybe emphasize them in the first few weeks of school there. But other than trying to convince her to find a friend that's going to do it, I really am worried about her kind of getting lost in the size and scale of the park if she isn't in something. And she's not necessarily inclined towards sports maybe, but it's like I can't even garner any interest from her at this point to even look into it.
Right. You know, honestly, I think as long as they're aware that they're out there, come the fall, usually our clubs and activities do kind of a lunchtime recruitment. So the kids can come out, they do it in the bus loop where the kids have the opportunity to walk around, and that time they'll walk with friends. They'll walk with who they're having lunch with, they'll start checking out some clubs and activities, and then being more aware of it. Again, we'll push it on our end. So as long as you've made them aware, and unless they have a direction or a passion, I'd say just focus on them getting to their classes. I think our English, or all the ninth grade teachers really do such a great job of also making that small connection. They really talk to the kids about where they're going to the next class and what do you do in each class and how the classes are connected. So there's really that connective piece that occurs, because their core classes should be, for the most part, they tend to be in their home school. And so they do have that closer knit group that starts to form naturally. We also see a lot of the kids that start to find friends from clubs or activities they've done outside of school events, or that they've had other relationships with. It could be elementary school. Some kids may have had friends in elementary school, separated middle school, and then are back at high school. And we see those connections happening. But I would really say that we'll push it enough. So as long as they're aware of that it's out there, it'll be encouraged naturally up here, and that will kind of be a better fit for them, because then they'll find it for themselves. Hi, go Rocks, by the way.
Yeah, I'm so excited. My son Marcel Jackson, he's going into Salem next year.
Okay.
So we're just getting ready and prepared mentally for my oldest to go to the park. It's insane. But I do thank you for the information about the clubs and activities. We actually did do those and actually got reached back from the coaches, and we thought there were tryouts the end of this month, but they said they just gave us the emails early because we were getting ready. So I'm just thankful for the communication though that they've been giving with the clubs and activities we've put Marcel in thus far. My main question though is, since curriculum night was on Zoom, when will we actually get to tour, the park? Like, is it not until the fall when they pick up their schedules? is there a time frame prior to that we can actually go as, a family, or, as at least parents and our son, to look at the school and walk the campus prior to the fall?
So my expectation is probably no, on the basis that we don't have their schedule yet. So the schedule isn't created until, that's what we are very busy working on right now with the upperclassmen. But that schedule actually doesn't come out until August. And while it's great for them to be on campus, it's just a basis of, with COVID is different. If it was a normal time, I'd tell you, yeah, come to a basketball game, go to a soccer game, absolutely attend those. Because the more you're in that environment and the more they kind of see what's happening with the upperclassmen and how other kids are attending and being part of those programs, that's really what you want them to be exposed to. But it will be enough when they come before school starts and pick up their schedule. Having those few hours of walking around and finding their classes really is quite a bit to help them. It really gives them that focus and viewpoint. And like I said, I'm expecting National Honor Society probably will do some tour days as we get closer to the school year starting, to make sure that, again, kind of be more specific about where's the cafeteria, where do you go sit, how do you manage this, where are bathrooms, that kind of information.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are they planning on doing the community open house this year? Do you know, like they've done in the past?
I have not heard.
Okay.
Usually we're part of that, so I have not heard yet.
Okay.
I can speak to this a little bit. We certainly value the importance of that event, and it's really collaborative between the district and the park. I think we'll have some opportunity, even if it's virtual. We definitely don't want to pass up the chance to further inform future families about the park, and that event is incredibly important way to do that. So we'll assess it, but I think we'll offer some kind of fall opportunity that helps for families to learn more about the park as they continue to think about their futures.
And I wouldn't be surprised. National Honor Society has come up with some, and Student Congress and Student Council has come up with some pretty amazing things sometimes. A few years ago, they did a lip dub video that was shared out. I don't know if it's still available on the school's website, but that was a great thing of seeing all the kids involved in clubs, activities, and then they went through the buildings. Along with some, music playing and them lip syncing it. It was pretty neat. But I would expect that there's a lot of ideas out there. The kids are really eager to participate and do activities. So I would just stay tuned, because I would expect there's a lot more coming.
Thank you so much, Barb. I just want to, are there any other questions about the park? I know we do have another topic, so if anyone does end up with another question or anything that you want clarified.
Can I ask one question?
Sure, go ahead.
I have a current freshman, so she did this transition last year, and they didn't have the activities extravaganza. So I guess my question is just, is there going to be an opportunity for some of the things that the freshmen missed? I mean, I know they've had some exposure to these things during this weird year, but just wondering what's available for the freshman class who didn't actually get this activities extravaganza presentation.
What I would recommend, if you have a child that's currently a ninth grader that didn't or is interested in a sports team specifically, I would reach directly out to the coach. I know that the head coach's emails are on the athletic pages. So depending on which school she's attending, definitely go to that site, email that coach directly, get their name connected, and see when tryouts are, and I'm sure they'll share some information. As far as clubs and activities go, in the fall, just as we would have done this fall as well, that is open during lunchtime for the kids to sign up. So it definitely is an opportunity that any classmates can sign up for. Again, it's not a requirement to start as an incoming freshman. You can join at any time. But I will definitely put something out there to make sure that our clubs and activities are advertising as we end this school year, to see if any other kids want to be part of that or join up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions before we kind of move on from Barb's topic? Well, Barb, I want to thank you so much. Just to let everyone know that, you would never know it, but this, wasn't exactly what you had, planned on speaking with us about. So I greatly appreciate it. You stepped up and just gave us a whole lot of value today talking about this topic. So we always appreciate you having here. You've always been a big supporter of our group, and you are a wonderful communicator for our parents. So I greatly appreciate it. And I know all the rest of us do as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Happy to join anytime. Have a good morning.
Thanks, you too. So continuing with that topic, since it is the season, and just to give other parents who are watching this to know, we are focusing a lot about the transition of a lot of our students to the park next year. For our next month's meeting, we will be focusing on the transition of our elementary students, our fifth graders, to the middle school, or other students you may have who are transitioning from another school to our middle schools. So we are going to continue this topic of the transition to high school. And one of our favorite presenters, she was actually one of my very first presenters that I reached out to when last year when we started having our board's first meeting where we planned our agenda. And I always love having her come here. So I really appreciate Amy Rilliker Brown, who is our assistant principal at Plymouth High School. And I realize you're very dedicated. You're coming from another state to present to us. So we really appreciate you having here, Amy. And she's going to talk about the general overall transition of middle school to high school today.
Yeah, my apologies for streaming from the Subaru. It's an important soccer weekend for my 10th grader. So
it just shows your dedication. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so Mrs. Lehman actually did an amazing job of covering a lot of things that we think about when we think about transition from middle school to high school. So I'm going to focus on a little broader lens on the whole like cognitive, social, emotional, logistical process. And then I'm really happy to answer any questions that I can after that. Okay. So when I think about middle school transition to high school, I tend to think in kind of three realms, and Mrs. Lehman really covered a lot of the logistical stuff. And then I also think about sort of cognitive and academic development and social emotional development. And I think just the only thing I would add to the sort of really great logistical picture that Mrs. Lehman gave you is that at Plymouth anyway, the APs and other administrators at the park have freshman meetings. So we try to spend a class period with every group of ninth graders at the park or at our school. And we do kind of like a restorative circle type of situation where we talk with the kids about how they're feeling about school, what parts of the transition are going well, what concerns they still have, and it's really informative. And when I started doing this, I think the thing that stood out to me the most was how positive kids were about a lot of the things that I think concern parents. Like, for example, the size of the park. There's just like a lot of enthusiasm in the freshmen for like walking. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we get to get out of the building and walk to another building. It's like, there's this real sense of like independence that I think we worry about them being intimidated by some of this stuff, but everybody around them is doing it too. And I think there's like some like good positive social pressure for like, well, we're big kids now, and I think that the freedom that they perceive in having to navigate a larger space is actually kind of like a boost for them most of the time. Yeah. And just like the number of new people to meet is often like spoken as a positive, where I know that a lot of us are concerned about kids getting, like a little lost or overwhelmed. I think those same things sort of end up being something that kids perceive as a positive. All right. So when it comes to like cognitive and academic development, I know all of you with kids have seen them sort of grow in their ability to, deal with more abstract concepts and have more interesting conversations, be a little more self-motivated for what they're like inquiring into, have better skills for like sharing their knowledge and self-monitoring whether they're learning. But one of the things that I really see going from middle school to high school is that in ninth grade, the kids start to take on a little more of the sort of prefrontal cortex burden, like the monitoring, like when are my assignments due? Like, they might get an assignment that they have to work on over the course of a couple days. In middle school, there's a lot more like parceling out. But I think it's important to remember that our freshman teachers are freshman teachers, and they're accustomed to sort of the skill level and development of P-CCS 8th graders. So they tailor their instruction to sort of where they're used to where the kids are at, and they really help them transition in freshman year to taking on more responsibility for the kind of organization and inquiry that they need to work at the high school level with their academics. So the 9th grade year is a really nice transition. It's really pretty well supported by the teachers. They teach kids content, but they also sort of teach them how to high school. They teach them how to monitor their own understanding, stay organized. And I talk to a lot of teachers who will say, like, I don't care what your system is, you just need to have one. And so some teachers will teach, like, in my class, you're going to learn my organization system. And if you never use it again, fine, but like start noticing, like, here are the things that help me stay on track, that kind of thing. So just kind of some reassurance that freshman teachers do a good job of sort of like leading and making the kids aware of that kind of metacognitive work that they need to start being more responsible for in high school. And like we see kids come along and take on more responsibility. Social emotional development is kind of similar. The kids start to become like more self-aware to notice when they're like when they're in a good spot and when they're not. We started this year to teach in every first hour some social emotional lessons, and I know that the middle schools have taken on this curriculum that we developed at the park and are using some of it. So the focus is really on some principles of CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's really psychoeducational. So it's not like group therapy. It's like teaching kids to understand what's going on in their own head and how that impacts their behavior and how that impacts their perception of the world. And then teaching them some skills, many of them rooted in the idea of mindfulness, which really comes out at school, and just kind of like being aware and non-judgmentally noticing what's going on in your head and how that's impacting your thinking, impacting your perception, and impacting your behavior, and then how that impacts outcomes. So we really are trying to deliberately teach kids skills for, again, like emotional self-regulation, self-awareness, problem solving, and communication. Everything, all of these like transitions are improved when kids feel connected. And Mrs. Lehman did a great job of explaining and emphasizing the importance of kids getting involved in sports, clubs, and activities. I'd like to emphasize fine and performing arts. This is like another really great way for kids to pursue something that's interesting to them. And often those classes are a little bigger, and kids will stick with them for multiple years. So again, you start to develop like stronger relationships around a shared interest. So, and tools for self-expression that are valuable long after high school is over. Another thing that I think is really key to a successful middle school to high school transition is a little bit of patience. So I have 7 kids, and my oldest 2 are 10th graders. And I was in a 504 meeting sometime this week where a parent of a freshman was talking about like being frustrated that their freshman was so disorganized and doing such a bad job of communicating. And I thought, like, oh, that was me a year ago, right? Like, and these skills that I'm like starting to take for granted in my 10th grader, one of them really has a very vigorous case of ADHD. Like, the skills that I'm sort of seeing kind of come together for him just took a little bit, and I wish sometimes that we emphasized more how much development happens over the 4 years of high school. And when we talk about a high schooler, the difference between a senior and a freshman, or the same kid as a senior and a freshman, is radical. We see this in kindergarten through 5th grade easily because the size of the kids and the type of teeth they have and all of that changes. It's really visible. And in high school, there's some visible change, but when you see them all together, it's not like you can go, oh, there are the freshmen, there are the seniors, you know what I mean? So so more things are happening under the surface. And I would just encourage myself and all of you and all parents to just try to have a little bit of patience and maybe be mindful when we're expecting, like, or if we're like thinking about high school behavior in a little too generic of a way. And so especially for freshmen and people who are just transitioning in, it's going to be rocky. And I think one of the most protective things you can do for a kid is to normalize failure. Not just like mistakes, but like things just going really wrong and falling apart. It's going to happen at some point. There's no escaping it. And it's great to have it happen in high school because they're still really well supported. And I know it seems like everything matters and everything's going on your transcript, but failing a class is really just not the end of the world. There are lots of opportunities to retake things, and there's so much to be gained from the experience of just failing and finding out that people still love you and that your life is not over and that you can make a plan to overcome whatever happens when you don't make the team, or you fail an exam, or God forbid, fail a class. Like, it just doesn't have to be the end of the world. And I don't know how much you all retained from high school, but the lessons of what to do when things don't go your way, like how you turned failure into a learning experience, how to communicate with other kids, how to communicate with adults, how to take responsibility for yourself, all this stuff that we're talking about with like emotional regulation and noticing your own thoughts and feelings, like that is totally just so valuable. And that's going to stick with kids long after the Krebs cycle, unless of course they go into biology or whatever. So in that vein, also, I think it's really important to think about balance in high school. We think a lot, 4 years is short, right? And time feels to me like it's speeding up. I'm really not ready to think about my boys moving out, and they don't seem ready for what's next, but I'm trying to remember to be patient. They've got 2.25 more years left to figure that out. But it's easy to kind of, before high school starts, to go, okay, 4 years, let's map it out. Let's have a plan. Let's make sure that we get in as many, we kind of take an academically aggressive approach and make sure that you leave high school with as many things under your belt as possible. And it's great. It's like forward thinking and planning is really important. But I really encourage kids and parents to balance that with thinking about what their daily life is like. So many of you know I used to run the Arts Academy. And so I'm just going to like come out as an avid supporter of the arts. So I have a bias there. I'm going to admit it. But if kids can find a way to take a class during the day that is something they love doing, that sort of feeds them as a person, it can have a huge impact on their resilience in other sort of more stressful academic situations. So I'm a musician. And so spending an hour a day playing music is like really feeds me, I don't get to do that anymore. But if I'm taking a lot of hard classes that are academically challenging, that might be exciting for me. It also might be draining. So having a class in something that you love that is less academically draining is a good way to sort of, feed yourself, keep your stamina going, and come out of high school like with another skill that might be more resilient in terms of the rest of your life, with social emotional connections to other people. So I guess I just would like to encourage everybody to think about like daily balance as well as like the kind of 4-year scheme. I think it's a really good way to support your kids' psychological health. Other things that I think parents and kids can do is talk a lot about communication, model good communication. By the end of high school, you're going to notice that teachers communicate a lot more with students than they do with parents. And I think that that's appropriate. For kids who are heading off to college, they're going to be on their own, right? Like if they need to add or drop a class, they're going to have to negotiate that. If they don't understand something, they're going to need to check their professor. They're going to need to like deal with their the people who run their dorm. I mean, they just need to be able to communicate with people they don't know. And so we do try to transition them there in high school. But like I said about being patient, I think it's helpful to model good communication because especially freshmen don't always know what this looks like. So when it's time to like email a teacher when there's a question, we want to see kids doing it, but like we can get them there. So for a parent to sit down with a kid and say, okay, like I'm gonna help you. Like, here's an example of what a good email to a teacher would look like realistically, right? From a 14-year-old. And then either write it with the kid or have the kid write it with you, but just being encouraging and supportive and making sure that they have good models for what communication looks like, that they hear you talking on the phone to teachers or colleagues or whatever. Make sure that they understand what it looks like and sounds like to communicate well, and then encourage them to start taking that on. So this way, when things come up, either like academically or social emotionally, they can have a way to like advocate for themselves, to reach out to the supports that we have at school. So every kid at the park has a support team built in. They have all of their 6 teachers. They have an assistant principal, and I don't know how assistant principals totally function at the middle school, but ours is not an entirely punitive role. And we really try to work in partnership with the teachers and students to make sure that things are going smooth at school. I tell them I'm their like #1 problem solver. Counselors, every kid's got a counselor. Our counseling staff is amazing. Miss Lehman is a really great example. Again, I'm biased. I run the counseling department, but I really do stand by it. I think that we have incredibly well-trained, compassionate, efficient counselors. And I encourage you and your students to reach out to them and have build a relationship. You'll have the same counselor for all 4 years. That's not always the case in a high school. And I think that's a real asset for us. So build a partnership with your counselor, because they're going to help with all sorts of decision making that will impact what happens after high school. Okay, I'll stop talking. Any questions?
Of course I do. Amy, you have 7 kids. That's amazing. Start by saying that. Thank you for all your information. It was very, very enlightening and helpful. I'm just going to give you 2 of my questions for now. My first one, I heard about the electives. I work obviously with the PTSO at my son's middle school, and working with his counselor, we were, trying to pick my son's elective classes.
Yeah.
What I forgot to ask her though, as you were talking, it came to my mind. Are the electives weighed the same as like the core classes, like as far as grades and GPA? Because I know like at Liberty, everything's weighed the same, no matter, all your 6 classes are the same as far as grade wise. Is it different in high school? Like electives are weighed more or less or equal?
Nope. Everything goes equally into the GPA.
Oh.
The only classes that have a higher weight are AP classes. Sometimes students who achieve a certain grade level are eligible for an honor point. So the more academically rigorous classes can come with an honor point, which, like, for example, kids are eligible for up to 5.0 GPA for that class.
Wow. And possibly get like college credit, like literally going into college with credit.
Yeah, it depends on the college, and this is something that's shifting. And I know that I feel like I have developed a persona that's like maybe misrepresents like how I might do things personally, because I think there is so much pressure on kids that I'm always like, but don't take too many AP classes because you'll lose your mind. Like I really like, I almost de-emphasize some of the academic rigor that's available at the park because it's exciting. We have a lot of options. I think we have 21 AP classes. There are IB diploma program courses that are also like really rigorous. And it can be like, oh my God, let's take them all. Let's do it all. And I think so I have a tendency to kind of like pull back from that because I know there is so much pressure like in the community and in like society at large to like achieve with grades. And it's like, oh, well, if I could get a 5 point, why would I aim for 4? So I'm sorry, I like totally lost my train of thought there.
That's perfect. That transitions to my second question, which is, I heard with AP classes, typically, you should allow at least 2 hours per day per AP class homework. So
Yeah.
what just a regular class, how much time should we allot for homework for just like a regular, I know he has like world history as
Yeah.
English. How much time for homework each day should we allot?
Okay. That is totally inconsistent between classes, so I can't really speak to it. Some teachers don't believe in homework and just don't send a lot. Other classes, like you could expect somewhere from none to 2 hours. So it really varies. I remembered what I was getting at though with AP classes. So some universities, the only way to get credit is not just by taking the class, but by passing the AP exam with a high enough score. And some universities will not give you that credit. So you can have a bunch of AP classes, pass all the tests with flying colors, and still not get credit. Or if you do get credit, there's like a certain number, like a limit of credits that you have to take through the university in order to get a degree from them. So it's just important to know that it's not sort of like a blanket credit scenario. If you pass the class, pass the exam with a high enough score, you're not even necessarily guaranteed college credit. But I mean, a rigorous like course selection on a transcript is a good thing when you're looking at universities, and it will help with admissions even if you don't get credit. But I want to emphasize that, like, as more and more people take more and more AP classes, universities are like a little more hesitant. I mean, they want to make money, right? So if you come in with 10 credits, like that's 10 credits you're not paying for at the university. So we see more and more institutions sort of limiting the amount of credits that they'll grant for AP classes.
Thank you.
Yep. That can't be it.
Are there any other questions from either parents who have transitioning students or commentary? I was glad you brought up the AP classes because I know, I don't know if it's just that I'm anxious or that back in the day, both when I was teaching as well as when I was a student, the AP classes were reserved for kind of like a senior year, not a capstone, but a transition, because you were going to you were looking at that very recent near college transition or a very high excelling junior. And suddenly it was being talked about this past year, as I've got a student who's transitioning to 9th grade, that there are freshmen taking AP classes, which I guess, just being honest, my jaw dropped. So is that a normal, I guess what I'm looking at is I was trying to, I guess, reconcile what my own experience was and now what perhaps the norm was, and also trying to kind of like filter what's expected of our students. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I guess.
totally. So, like I said, I'm a real advocate for patience with your kids' development and recognition that a 9th grader is developmentally really different from a 12th grader. And to remember that an AP course is a college course.
Right.
So, I mean, the reason you get college credit is because that's the level of instruction and that's the level of personal responsibility that we're expecting. So you might have a 9th grader who is ready for the content, but might find the level of organization and kind of prefrontal cortex work of like staying on top of everything, and managing those timelines. They might find that really overwhelming, and that might be a real source of stress. Maybe your kid is ready for both, or maybe your kid is well supported enough that they can pull that off. But I think it is more common developmentally to have seniors and juniors who are both ready for the academic work and ready for the mental load of keeping it all straight, keeping up with it, having the sort of writing stamina that you need often for these classes. A lot of the classes are really valuable. A lot of kids learn more in their AP Lit class about about critical thinking and literary analysis than they're going to learn in their freshman English class at university. I don't want to discount the value of these classes, but again, like there's a difference between a 17, 18-year-old and a 14-year-old trying to tackle the material, and also, again, like sort of doing the work of keeping it all together.
I would also add, most of the AP classes are a culminating, like a 5th year. AP Calc, BC, and AB have to happen after pre-calc. AP Spanish is after 4 years of Spanish. And really the only freshman one that's an option is the AP World History. And
that's really only an option because
and there are 2 classes.
Every freshman takes world history. And so some students elect to try to replace their world history class with this AP class because they don't want to have it be like the second time they hit world history in 4 years. But again, I mean, I used to teach it in the IB program, which is not necessarily restricted to students who are really like academically ambitious, but a lot of academically ambitious kids found themselves there. And I mean, the senior year, they were still talking like AP World almost killed me, like it's hard. There's a lot of material. There is a lot of homework. There's a lot of writing, and it's great. I mean, it's all really wonderful information, but it's like kind of just happenstance that like we teach world history in 9th grade. And so there's this like kind of thought like, oh, I'll just swap that out for the AP version, when really that might not be developmentally sort of the best.
And again, we're talking 60 kids, and 60 kids is the entire 9th grade, Plymouth, Canton, and Salem. So it's a rare kid that really has that side of passion, but it is a great class for them in their future when they have, like Amy has said, if they've academically and they've proven that they can handle the workload, their organizational side is there. But another avenue a lot of our kids will follow is by taking some honors classes in that sophomore year and really getting their feet wet to know of that academic level. But I think the biggest thing is that between what both Amy said and I said is that balance. Because when we talk to the kids, we want them to talk about balance of not only their academics, but we talk about, well, how much do you spend on the field? How much are you involved in your activity? Do you have a job? Are there other responsibilities? We want them to be a happy kid. And a lot of that comes from their balance between their academics and their life. So it's a great thing to find that combination for.
Can I add something? I have a senior this year and I also have a sophomore, and no matter what classes they take, AP and not, I have a sophomore who is taking a lot of AP classes. I have a senior who just got into 4 colleges that he applied for, and he has only taken 1 AP class this year, his senior year. As our family looks at high school, it should be a time to remember and have fun, not be stressed, and mental health for our family is more important than pushing them above and beyond their abilities, because not every kid is set up to do an AP class. I would rather have a happy student.
I feel like I need to add, just because I'm really trying to help the science department with this information. A lot of our science curriculum changed last year, and students are not eligible to take AP classes in science until they've had either the regular or honors version. So for example, if I wanted to take AP physics, I'd have to take physics or honors physics first. AP bio, you have to take bio or honors bio first. Chemistry, same thing. If I want to take AP Chem, I have to take chemistry or honors chemistry first. So there really aren't that many options. Like Ms. Lehman said, there aren't that many options for a freshman.
Okay, I want to thank all of you for that information, and just for those of you who are viewing at home, maybe also, I think rewinding and going back to this section would be incredibly valuable for those of us who have a student transitioning to 9th grade. I just think that we just had one of those moments and durations of time during this meeting that I get excited. The reason I get excited to come to these meetings. So thank you, Melissa, for that comment. I want to thank you, Amy Williker-Brown, for helping us, from out of state, and for your dedication to this group. That I just think that was a very valuable duration of time that we just had from you. Thank you so much for all that you have added here for that topic. Barb Lehman, thank you again for chiming in. I'm just so glad that you were still here on the call to add to that topic. And I just think it's a very valuable perspective that you're giving our parents during this transition. So thanking those speakers, and we have also coming here, we have our virtual academy coordinators, Stephen Bollier, who's our virtual academy coordinator, and Amanda Palukas, who's also our elementary virtual academy coordinator, K-8. Those of you, I think, who are listening realize that our virtual academy was something that we had planned on doing in our district and has now come together very quickly, but incredibly well. Coming from a virtual academy family this year, I have been incredibly appreciative of what the opportunity that they've given some of our families. And it is sticking around, and Stephen and Amanda are here to tell us about those families who may decide to either continue or change over to the virtual academy for this year and what's involved.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having us here. We have a couple of things to just talk about regarding the program and where we're moving in the future. So we're so excited that the district has committed to making this virtual academy a premier virtual academy, something that we haven't seen before in the area, and it's really going to change things for P-CCS and our students who choose a virtual environment. We're currently working on the development of curriculum, focusing on the high school right now. We will not be using Michigan Virtual next year. Next year, we will have all of our own teachers with P-CCS curriculum, so that robust curriculum that we are used to, we will be doing with our teachers and our students in our virtual classroom. We're working on transitioning that Safe Start mirror. This year, we were kind of bound to the same schedule that our Safe Start students had. Next year, we will be working on our own schedule, so things that will work for our students. And we won't have to worry about doing the exact same schedule, because we're hoping that we will have a clear delineation of teachers. So we won't be sharing teachers from the classroom, which was what we ran into this year, and why our middle school schedule had to change and mirror the Safe Start or the elementary. So that's something we're looking at for next year. We are also, reviewing what worked best for our families and students and what didn't work. So we're going to take those lessons learned and continue to focus on what works best for our students, be very student-centered and very conscious of that when we create this program for next year, which I like to say is our Virtual Academy 2.0 for next year. And we really move into that traditional virtual environment. We are also launching our website, so our webpage on the district website. So we're really excited about that. That should be up and running hopefully today, where parents will be able to get additional information. And once we move into the actual enrollment time for us, parents will be able to go there and get, like I said, information, view some frequently asked questions, and have some more contact information for us if they have anything that they need from us moving forward in the future. But that's the real brief where we are today, and it's a lot of planning and intense work to get ready for the fall, but we will be there, and I think that everybody's going to be very pleased with the changes that we make for next year. Are there any questions? Hopefully answer anything that anyone has.
I was just curious if you had any indication of the percentage of kids that are going to continue on at this point, or is that still a few months out?
that's still a few months out. We did have that interest survey that went out back in February, but that wasn't a commitment on anyone's part. It was just a, what are you thinking about for next year? So we really don't have any concrete numbers at this point.
Right. So that's one of the things that our families do need to keep in mind, is that there was that August timeframe last year where we decided whether we were going to continue or going to start the year with Safe Start, or going to commit to the VA. And very graciously, the district allowed families to either enter or leave the VA when there were big moments happening in Safe Start. So the thing that families need to understand is this is a much different perspective this year, right? This is, how you're going to move forward for the whole year. And this is the decision currently continues for the whole year, correct?
Sure. Just like in the classrooms, we have to schedule teachers. We have to make sure class size is appropriate. We start building the master schedule. The same will happen for virtual academy. So we will be making that decision much earlier than August, like we did the first time around.
Sure. So just so families do understand that, that's great. Any other questions about the virtual academy?
It was just so parents know, will there be caps on it? Is there a limit to the number of people that can enroll?
When we have our initial enrollment, it will be completely open enrollment, and it will be staffed then based on those numbers. So we do not have any caps at this point, no.
All right, any other questions for Amanda? Thank you very much for being here.
I just have one thing. I just think that I think might be helpful for parents to understand. Not every high school operates this way. And I'm just like speaking from the high school, but we build our master schedule. So which teacher is teaching which class in which building at which time from student course requests. So those of you who went to university probably remember, like, the classes were set and you just tried to get a spot. And because this is high school and everybody has to meet their graduation requirements, we can't operate that way, but we are that size. So our commitment to building a master schedule from student course requests continues despite logistical challenges. So it might feel crazy to be making a decision about virtual versus in-person instruction for the 21-22 school year now, but as Mrs. Hart mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, we're really trying to get back on a more like sane timeline cycle. And we have to start now to think about what we would normally be thinking about at this time of year. So it's going to be soon, and probably sooner than would initially seem to make sense, that people are going to need to make decisions about virtual versus in-person learning for next year. But in order for us to move forward and deliver the product that we know the community wants, like a schedule that accommodates students' needs and preferences, we have to have that information quickly, like ideally a couple of weeks ago, in order to put together a schedule that like addresses the needs and preferences of all the students. There's a lot that goes into it, and I will not take up your time trying to explain it, but it isn't an overestimation of the time that it actually requires. We're a little behind where we'd like to be in terms of like moving forward and putting this together, and we'll do it. Like, it'll happen. It's going to be great. But I guess I just want to sort of balance what I imagine might be a perception that it's like early to be making this decision with just like the perspective that this commitment we have to really taking every student's course request into account when we build the master schedule requires like time to put it together.
Absolutely. I think that that's a really good point to make, is that parents and families do need to understand that not only it's our interest and our comfort level with the world situation and how things are going, and trying to project what's happening in August or September, but we also have to realize the behind the scenes workings that need to happen in order to create these schedules. So I think that's a really good point. So any other, Antoinette, you have a question?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a question or just a comment, and I don't know if Nick even maybe has the answer to it, but I'm just kind of worried about the teacher shortage everywhere, especially because we have teachers in the virtual academy, as well as teachers that are Safe Start in person. And then you have like the class sizes have to be a certain number. So then we need more teachers because you have to divide those classes. I'm just wondering, is anything being done with that to accommodate all the teachers that we need? And then the shortage that's currently, that we're currently experiencing, with just not having enough or them being certified or being ready. And, teachers, obviously some have retired or have done just different things because of COVID. Is there anything being done to address that issue? Because I know that's really big, like even in middle school right now. And I don't know about the park, but I'm assuming there as well. How are we handling that teacher shortage issue that I know we're experiencing on our end?
It's a great question, and it's everywhere. It's not just a P-CCS issue. And the one thing I can speak to for sure is that our human resources department is just working so hard on recruitment and trying to find all sorts of different, unique and new ways, especially in pandemic, to make sure we're recruiting high quality teachers to the district and that they come to the district and stay in the district. And so I know that recruitment efforts have been really, really strong, even pre-pandemic, when it was clear that there was going to be some shortages with teachers. There was a lot of intentional work on that. So I can assure you that we're doing everything we can control to step up our recruitment efforts, but it definitely exists. It's a great point. And we'll continue to do everything we can to try and recruit high quality talent to P-CCS.
Thank you. Hi, Monica.
Oh, it feels like a little piece of normal being back with our parent council in a regular fashion. So thank you. I'm excited. I always say this is my favorite meeting of all the meetings that I attend throughout the district.
I echo that for sure, Monica. So there's always the little, it was totally normal, right? Because normally you kind of like come in through the side door and we're all like, oh, hi, Monica, as the meeting's still going. So I want to thank you, Amanda Palukis, as well as I see that Stephen's on the call as well. They are our virtual academy coordinators. And I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day today to speak to our parents. And we wish you luck, because I know you guys have a lot of constructing and planning to do, scheduling to make that virtual academy happen for the fall. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having us.
So with Amanda and Stephen's presentation in Virtual Academy, we are going to just take a perspective. We actually left intentionally a little more time today to focus on our district updates. I think it's been incredibly important for us to, even before this year, to just, one of our meetings goals is to like take a look at the district as a whole. It's always what I enjoyed, even as a parent who had a preschooler and a kindergartner, to take a look at the district as a whole and kind of get this big picture of what's going on and, gets you excited for what's to come. We have several of our district officers on our call. And I know I do want to check in with Gretchen. I know that you're on the call from Boyne, right? Would you like to do the EEF update? And we can let everybody know what's going on with our Educational Excellence Foundation. This is Gretchen Ward, who is a parent of students in our district as well, right? Isbister and as well as Pioneer. And she's also the director of our Educational Excellence Foundation.
Great, thanks for that setup, Judy. And I echo what Monica just said. It is so refreshing to see you all and have kind of our normal format coming back. It's been a long time and things have changed, but it's nice to see that our parent council is still here and thriving, and what great information we always gain from it. Because yes, I am the executive director of the foundation. We are the nonprofit that supports the entire district from a global standpoint. But like Judy said, I'm also a parent. I've got a 5th grader at Isbister and a 7th grader at Pioneer. So interesting to be a parent and an employee at this time to see things from a global perspective that also affect us individually. So, but yes, we are here on location at Boyne Mountain where it's a balmy 39 degrees and my son's out there snowboarding in a sweatshirt. So, but anyway, I just wanted to share a couple of updates with the EEF because like everyone this year, we've had to pivot. Our events were canceled and the way that we normally do business just changed dramatically. But I want everyone to know that we are still here and working hard to support our schools. A couple ways that we've done that over the course of the last year is we were able to do our regular classroom grant cycle. And it was so refreshing and it really filled our buckets this year because we were able to award about $24,000 to classroom grants. But what was amazing about it is to see the intentional thought that teachers put into their asks this year about responding to student needs during this time. We found that they were writing grants about social emotional learning opportunities. They were writing grants to help support online instruction. This grant right here, this grant of the month, was a book that a PE at the park got every student in their class because they couldn't be together to actually work out. So he was teaching leadership and involvement. So really energizing grants that we were really happy to help support the teaching and learning during the pandemic. You just heard Amanda talk about expanding the virtual academy at the park. We just committed $50,000 to help support curriculum development for that. So we're really, really proud to be able to do that. And just the support and outpouring from the community. You know, I had people call all during times of the pandemic to say, what does P-CCS need? How can I help? I want to reach families and make sure students still have equitable learning opportunities regardless of their financial situations. And so we have donors who have given money to schools so that if their students need money for a field trip when they come back, or if they need help providing supplemental materials, that they can have those opportunities. So it's just been a really humbling time to do what we do here at the foundation because we've just really appreciated the outpouring of support from the community for our schools. But one thing I do want to emphasize right now that's really kind of on our radar are scholarships. Each year, the foundation awards about $20,000 to graduating seniors to pursue their post-high school goals. Last year during the pandemic, we took a big hit in our scholarships and we actually didn't award some because we didn't have any applicants. And I think that that was just a timing situation. And I definitely don't want that to happen this year. But my messaging that I really want folks to know is that if you have a senior or you know a senior, encourage them, not only with the EEF scholarships, they can go to our website to download the application. Thank you, Nick, for sharing that of our scholarships, but even just reaching out to their counselors because you don't have to be the strongest academic student to receive scholarships. You know, we do have some scholarships that are academically based, but we have scholarships for students who, like this one, who attended Farron Elementary. We have the Damaris Arts Award for students who have art portfolios. We have a new scholarship this year for students who are going into the automotive industry. So I don't want people to be encouraged or to be intimidated by the scholarship process. And I feel that sometimes that happens. So please encourage your students to take a look and to apply. Scholarships will range anywhere from $250 up to $100 or up to $1,500, $2,000. And they definitely all add up when you think about the rising cost of education. So please encourage, if anyone has any questions, they can definitely reach out to me at the foundation. Again, my name is Gretchen Ward. And anyway, you know, that as we're kind of wrapping up the school year, how it's been a little bit unusual. Anyway, at the foundation, we can support, you know, we're open and we're being nimble this year. So please reach out if you have any ideas, thoughts, questions, or just want to get involved. We are a fantastic group of people who are just trying to do good. So we enjoy what we do and we're grateful to do it. So that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions? Awesome. Well, thanks, Judy. And I also say to Parent Council, I love having this platform just to share what we do. So thank you for the invitation and always including us. So it's great to be back.
You bet. We're so glad to have you back. And thank you for, you know, this is one of the small silver linings of this year is that we could have you, even though you were, you know, out of the general area here. So we really appreciate you taking time out of your time. You're always so positive. You guys are good people doing good things for our district. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Gretchen. So we can move on with our last item on our agenda. Again, I said that we left intentionally more time today to just talk about district happenings. Some of our past meetings have been devoted in total to just talking about district happenings, leaving time for parents' questions, and really doing exactly what this group intends to do, is to bridge communication between our district administrators, staff, and our parents and families. So Monica, I want to welcome you here officially, and thank you for spending time just to communicate with our parents, families, and caregivers of our P-CCS students. So I'll let you have the floor and say whatever you want to say, and then afterwards we have a couple questions for parents who sent in questions, or questions for parents who are here today.
Perfect. Thank you, President Hart. And again, just thank you for this opportunity. I always enjoy these moments where we can engage and answer questions and help to continue to be sources of information for others. I think as we are so close to this work, we're doing it every day. Sometimes we have the illusion of, multiple ways that we communicate, that still everything is completely clear. And so it's so great to be able to have two-way communication so we can make sure that we clarify. Before just giving an update, I just want to share with you how so excited we are right now to have our kids back for greater opportunities for in-person learning. When I tell you this week has been like the first day of school all over again. When you go into the classrooms, you go into the lunchrooms, the kids are so excited to be back. The staff is so excited to be there with the kids. And when we all kind of had fears because we are in the middle of a pandemic, we still have pretty significant transmission throughout our community, but just being there together and just that synergy is just, it's just contagious and it's great. And I just wanted to be able to share that people are doing their part to follow our mitigation strategies. Our kids are doing such a great job. They're so compliant. They're holding each other accountable like little nose, because it's not that they're being, sometimes their mask might fall down when they're talking, but they'll, mark or what they said, this is a new universal sign, meaning to pull your mask up. So it's great. We worried about the lunchroom. We're making sure that we're adhering to the 6 feet within the lunchroom when they're unmasked. And so some kids initially were, we didn't know where they feel like that was less social, but when you go in there, they're still completely spaced out, but really happy in that space. So I'm just so pleased. I am so thankful for our village, because everybody has come in to assist to make sure that we are keeping our students and our staff safe. So we have cabinet core, members even of the EJ McClellan staff, like Jamie, who helps out in HR, and Colleen and payroll people that are just going over to help supervise lunch so that we make sure that we have full coverage. There's such a commitment from the board all the way through every position to just make sure it's a full hands on deck so that we can continue to keep everyone safe and adhering to our plans. And I just wanted to report, because I know sometimes on social media we have different interpretations, but I want to report from being here and being in the buildings, it is going well. I even had the pleasure of being a substitute in the past 2 days. 2 weeks, I was a substitute at Byrd for a 5th grade class, and I was a substitute at Isbister for a 2nd grade class, so our teachers could go get their vaccines. And I tell you, in 5th grade, when I walked in and the lesson plan was fractions, and I'm like, who would like to assist? And then I left a note to the teacher, you may want to reteach that lesson on fractions, but the kids just did a great job. Just wanted to be able to share that. Speaking of vaccines, I am so pleased. We have such a high level of receptivity to being vaccinated here by our staff, although it's not mandatory, but we do feel like that will help us to even be able to create a safer environment. So as of tomorrow, through our connections through Wayne County Health Department, which we are supporting a process with the health department that allows any staff, any contracted services such as our drivers, our GRBS cleaners, our substitute teachers to receive vaccinations through Wayne County Health Department in the school. So we will have vaccinated 2nd dose in the arm over 1,100 employees as of tomorrow, which is huge. On top of that, I already know of hundreds. The most recent update I had was over 400 staff members who received the dose on their own, just using their own health departments or doctors. So that's just a large amount of our staff members that are receptive will now have two doses in their arms, and they say 2 weeks after that you're considered fully inoculated. So I think that that's just really great timing as we continue on with our next milestone of increasing our in-person learning. That is happening on Monday for PCEP. And all of us are nervous about that. We want to be very realistic in the reality that there are 5,000 students. We have a total of 6,300 students at the park, and a little over 1,200 have chosen the virtual academy. So we're looking at about 5,000 students that will return for half days, 4 days a week, beginning Monday. In order to make this happen, we know that there was a shift, and I do want to make sure we clarify here today. I know that there might be some questions later we can address. We have consistently followed the guidance from the state as it relates to our spacing, our mitigation strategies to allow us to be in person. Up until January, the recommendation out of the state was 6 feet in instructional spaces as well as in eating spaces. The governor issued, actually the Michigan Department of Human Health and Human Services, the first week in January, issued new guidelines. And although 6 feet is still the goal or the standard, it allowed for 3 feet as a minimum standard in instructional spaces when kids are still masked. So you're making sure you have multiple layers of mitigation strategies. And then 6 feet when students are eating and unmasked. So this shift in this guideline allowed us to then move from our hybrid model and bring students back to full in-person. There's so much more we know about the disease now, 11 months in. Looking at what's happening in schools, schools are still showing to be low areas of transmission. So even with our cases, which I want to say we actively have cases, if you're watching our website, we're not experiencing in-school transmission. So what that means is that somebody is exposed to COVID-19 and is positive, comes into school as a positive case. We identify, we have to close contact quarantine according to the guidelines from the health department. But then there's not what's called an epi-link. That student is not transmitting the disease to another student or not transmitting to a staff, and it's not staff to students. So schools are still, even with cases, are still places of low transmission in our classroom spaces, in our lunchroom spaces. A little bit of a different story in athletics. And so we've had some person-to-person transmission in athletics. And we do know because of the close contacts, sports, running around, the physical activity, there's going to increase your risk exposure. So we've had a couple of our teams right now. I think, Josh, are you on this call? I want to say we might have up to 6 teams that are currently on quarantine. And the protocols right now from the health department are if an athletic team, one person on the team tests positive, we have to quarantine the entire team if we're within 48 hours of the positive test or exposure. Did I say that right, Josh?
Yep, it's you're correct in everything. We have 6 teams in quarantine. The standard from the Wayne County Health Department is different, as Monica stated, for athletics. It is any athlete or coach who participated in an athletic event, whether it be practice, game, or otherwise, within the 48 hours preceding either the symptom onset or the positive test. All of them are required to quarantine. So they don't go by a 6-foot, 15 consecutive minute rule like we would in a classroom or in another situation in school. And that guidance comes directly. They're using language that was in the MDHHS interim guidance for sports. And in that, they speak to different mitigation measures for sports due to the closeness and high possibility of spread because of all the different nuances that go on with athletics.
Thank you. So when we look at what's happening in our schools right here in Plymouth Canton, what's happening in our county, what's happening nationwide, it's still evidence to support that schools are low transmission and moving forward with greater opportunities for in-person learning outweigh the benefits of having to be in a remote space. Recognizing as we make this next milestone at PCEP, We will have to deal with close contact quarantines, and that increase that's currently at the park, they're sitting 6 feet apart. So in some of the classrooms, that minimum would be that 3 feet of distancing. But we know at this point, we believe we're ready. We have the mitigation factors that are in place. We have our nursing staff working with Mr. Meyer, working with the health department, is doing an excellent job with contact tracing, some protocols at PCEP with QR codes to make sure that we know where kids are sitting and assist with that process are in place. And so we are ready and excited and nervous about Monday. But I also want to be clear, health and safety has been that standard from day one. If there's ever a point where we are not able to continue with continuity of learning because either too many kids are out on quarantine, or if we are starting to see that in-classroom transmission, then we would have to have a conversation around, is it time to take a pause? Right now, we are really encouraged by the number of vaccines. For a while, the cases were going down. There's been a slight uptick, and we're all kind of keeping our lines open with the health department to have conversations around spring break, anticipation of a slight surge with people traveling. We've issued some guidance that comes right from the health department. This is on the daily screener for parents when you're looking for your students, with the CDC guidelines on international travel. And Josh, I might get this wrong, so I might need your help. I think it's a mandatory 7-day quarantine and a negative PCR test to return to in-person. We've had questions about domestic travel. Once again, following the guidelines of the CDC, there's not a requirement for quarantine when you're traveling domestically, but still we're encouraging, and we've updated our information to just say, make sure that you're self-monitoring. We really say in a COVID-19 environment, it's the responsibility of all of us to keep everyone safe. So asking parents to also do that monitoring and making sure that you're sending kids to school healthy. Josh, did I say those requirements correctly for international and domestic travel?
Yes, you did. That is correct.
Other than that, I think maybe just a little clarity on that close contact quarantine. Once again, we are following the guidance of the health department. Up until today, and we're still getting some clarity, it was a mandatory quarantine of 14 days for anybody who's identified as a close contact. The health department has issued new information today that might allow for us to turn that back to 10 days as long as there are not any symptoms. And as I've said, for our cases where kids have to go out on close contact quarantine, they're not coming up as positive cases when they've been exposed in the classroom. So that's a great thing. Right now, they have to be out of school for 14 days. This new shift would allow us moving forward to return the kids to school after 10 days instead of 14 days, which is really good news for us. So we just literally that's hot off the press. We got that this morning. I think still working to get some clarification from the health department in terms of, is it effective today moving forward? Is there any retroactivity to those that are currently out on quarantine? And we'll make sure that we update our community on that as we know more, but I think that's good news. We're continuing to work while kids are out on quarantine to make sure that we can support their learning. And so working with our teachers to have really a menu of options that can be used while kids are in quarantine. That's no fault of anyone's. We just have to follow the guidance, and we need to make sure if kids are not able to be in person in the classroom, that our teachers are working with our families to ensure continuity of learning. Menus include creating classroom resources and activities, assignments, utilizing the Canvas learning management system to make sure that assignments are available for students to use while teachers are teaching in the classroom. Also connecting via a Zoom meeting, if that could be just a one-on-one connection, it could be with the kids that are out on quarantine. We also have the opportunity for staff to allow kids to Zoom into the classroom, more like either a webinar kind of scenario where kids on quarantine could Zoom in and follow lessons as they're happening live. We can't require that, but many of our teachers, especially at the high school level, have started doing that as well. Some teachers are recording versions of their lessons and classroom instructions and uploading that so students can do that asynchronously. But really just working at the building level with the teachers to ensure that we have a plan for support while kids are out. Another thing that we are in the process of doing is actually hiring 2 support teachers, which will be available for those students that are out on quarantine, can't reach their teacher for live support because the teacher is teaching, but would have that opportunity utilizing the assignments from their classroom to connect with this virtual teacher. And right now we're looking at having, it's posted, trying to get a secondary person and an elementary person. So there's just multiple layers of support. And not an easy process at all. And we recognize the frustration and continuing to work together to make sure that we can support the needs of our students while out on quarantine. There has been a request from board to share that information publicly in terms of the number of students that are affected by close contact quarantines. We currently, according to the emergency order that's in place, you're required to post positive cases and probable positive cases within 24 hours of us finding out about that. That's what we have on our website, but the request is to look at the number of close contact quarantines. Some districts have chosen to do that. At this point, we have not chosen, but look, we're looking at maybe in the aggregate to be able to report at least like the weekly number of kids that are in quarantine. And so to be determined, but looking to hopefully get something up next week. So I think I'll stop talking here and maybe move to questions. I see some popping up in the chat, so I'll turn it back to you, President Hart, to take us through the questions.
Thank you so much. I found the information that you were just giving us to be very eye-opening. I think, being that a lot of times it's not only just, the Facebook communication, but a lot of times it's the so-and-so heard from so-and-so who's, at school. And I think to get the information about the spread and that the cases are happening outside of school and that the quarantining is precaution and it doesn't mean that it's spreading like wildfire, like how it might come across in communication. I think that's very, really good information. So I thank you for, to have the person, though we're not in the same room, to have you as the bearer of the information is just very, I think, very big for us parents. What I know that there are a couple questions that have come through the chat here. I have a couple questions that came through our Google form that we sent out at the end of last week. And so we'll interchange between those. And if one of our board members, I know that if you want to take one of the questions that came through the chat, we could do that. So this question is, can you please clarify what happens if a student tests positive? What happens to all the students that the positive student has classes with, or are they all put in quarantine?
So for the class environment, it triggers our investigation on close contact quarantines. A close contact is a person who is with less than 6 feet for greater than 15 minutes. And so that's why I talked about when we know coming back with PSEP now, that's going to increase because right now in a hybrid, they're sitting 6 feet apart. K-8 right now, they're sitting 3 feet apart. So what happens is the team then goes to, kids are now in assigned seats. There's seating charts. As I said, some of the schools at the high school are using QR codes so they know exactly where students are seated in the cafeteria. If you meet that criteria of less than 6 feet for greater than 15 minutes, you're identified as a close contact. So there's a case identification letter that goes out. The school nurse works there in conjunction with the health department in identifying the close contact quarantines. And then that would trigger that. Currently, it has been a 14-day quarantine. Now effective today, it looks like it's still kind of the 14-day is the goal, but if there are no symptoms from that student, would be able to return after 10 days. Josh, did I answer that completely correctly or did I leave anything out?
Yes, that's all correct. In situations where a student is, as Monica stated, we do have some classrooms where a student may be closer than 6 feet. In those situations, Anybody that would be in that closer than 6 feet, because we get this question a lot, is so for example, if we can't maintain 6 feet of spacing between where the kids are sitting, and let's say they're 4 feet apart, because that's what we have the classroom set up. Anybody that would be in it within that 6 feet from that student would be automatically considered a close contact. And so those students would be quarantined, but not every student in the classroom unless they were identified as that 6 feet, 15 consecutive minutes.
The only time, again, that the whole group of would be quarantined is not a classroom setting, it's with athletics. And that is just that standard. If one student, anybody that was at practice or a game or around that positive exposure, the whole team is quarantined. But other than that, in the classroom, only close contacts.
Okay. All right. And this is one of the questions that came in as our Google form. And Monica, you did a great job of addressing these topics already. I'll just be, transparent with everyone that this came in as a question. And feel free, if you want to reiterate any major point, feel free to do so. This question was, are you please able to explain why the district has been able to change distancing in classrooms from 6 feet to 3 to 6 feet? We signed up for Safe Start believing that our students would be following CDC guidelines of 6 feet. And now we don't have another choice in the matter now that it has been changed. This has really been a source of stress for our students and our family.
And I appreciate that question. I appreciate the stress. I know there's so much unknown still. Like as I say, we know so much more about the disease, but we still are learning, right? And so I understand that that's stress because we consistently hear 6 feet and that hasn't changed. There's actually some incongruency between the CDC and the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. CDC is still utilizing that 6 feet standard, but as I said, we're currently following the guidance of the state. And if you look at the CDC itself, it suggests that you follow the guidance of your state. And so in January, once again, our state made the shift to say 6 feet is still, so you'll see all over the documentation, 6 feet is still the goal, but while in instructional spaces, you could go down to a minimum of 3. So, some of our instructional spaces are 4 or 5, some are still able to have closer to 6. We have some classrooms, I know we have one even Safe Start classroom in the elementary school that might have 8 students that are attending, and that's wonderful. So, but we will ensure that there will not be less than 3 feet. Interestingly, someone shared a study with me yesterday. I need to spend more time with it, but it's involving, it's not a Michigan study. I think it's a national study. When they're looking at this 3 to 6 feet, they had over 250 districts that represent over 500,000 students, over 100,000 staff, and it was really the study was trying to see the transmission or the transmission between 3 and 6 feet, and it was really negligible. And so that standard of 6 feet is there. In an instructional space, we now have that ability to do a minimum of 3, and really the study and the data suggests that it is not leading to any greater transmission than if students were at 6 feet. So it's more the value of having more in-person learning in this space where students are still not transmitting between student and student or student and adult is the safer move to make. Not safer is probably not the best choice of words. It's educationally, it's the best move for us moving forward in a safe space. I don't know if that question, I saw that the stress for families, and again, I don't think it was asked, but I would share, although we tried to even, once this new guidance came to, even though we couldn't guarantee, still give families that choice of going between the virtual academy if space was available. And I want to say we had over close to 200 families still took advantage of that, which was great. But there's still some families, because they couldn't get in, if they're still, just scared about coming back, we understand, and we still want to work to try to support. And what we have shared with our buildings for families to just contact their building principal. If they believe that they're not ready to come back, they would have that ability to call their student in as absent. We have to provide education for students, and it would really kind of go along that same menu of offerings that I shared for those that are quarantined, that students would still have access to their activities and assignments through those different menus. But I would definitely say, if that is still a concern, reach out to your building principal and see how your student can be supported until you're able to feel comfortable with that return.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Hey, Judy, I can take the next one in the chat if
Yeah.
you want.
Great. Yeah.
I think I know the answer to this, but it says if a kid has a negative PCR test after 7 days after exposure, are they still required to quarantine even if the doctor says they're fine to return?
As frustrating as it is, the answer is yes. And that was even as we got the updated guidance today from the state looking at 10 days from local Wayne County Health Department, 10 instead of 14, they still emphasize that a negative PCR test will not allow a student to return any sooner than the quarantine that is established.
And there was one more question that was sent to us through the Google form. And it said, I know that this will be a hard question to answer, as no one knows exactly what the future will look like in terms of the pandemic. But how confident are you that students will be able to resume 5 full days in-person learning come September?
It is a great question. And of course, as the question's shared, I can't guarantee anything, but I am fully under the belief that we will be 5 days K-12 in the fall. And I say that when we look at just the vaccination and what's happening, even what we're hearing, in terms of the idea that every adult who wishes to be vaccinated would have that ability to be vaccinated by May. We're literally a year away from when the pandemic hit, and we look at times of surge. From last year, we had that initial surge around flu season and in the winter. But I think we're in a much better place with more people vaccinated, with us understanding and controlling the disease much better. We don't know about the new variant, and so I think that if that were to take off, that could cause us to change plans. But really, the idea and the conversations that we are having internally is we're not even looking at Safe Start versus Virtual Academy. We will just be back in person next year is the plan for the fall, pending any other scenario in a health space that would cause us to pivot. And then we would offer that virtual academy, as you heard. And so that will always, we've had such success with that. We want to be able to offer the virtual academy. But the plan would be that we would return in 5 days. We're already there at elementary. We're there at Starkweather. We're at 4 days for middle school right now, and working towards a way to increase the time at P-CCS, get through this year, continue to evaluate. But the plan would be to be back to full opportunities for in-person learning 5 days in the fall.
I was actually mistaken. I apologize. That there is one more question that we were sent through Google, our Google form, and this was from a parent from Pioneer Middle School, and the parent says, "My son is one of the many kids that had to recently quarantine at Pioneer Middle School. I understand that there are many logistics concerning spacing out the kids, but I was surprised to learn that in many cases, the distance from each desk is only 3 feet or 3.5 feet of the suggested 6 feet. I know that the school and the teachers are doing a phenomenal job under trying circumstances, but I'm concerned that this close proximity, particularly after spring break, when so many will be traveling, will lead to even more frequent quarantines. Is there something that the schools can do to mitigate this issue and space out more if possible?"
So I definitely appreciate the concern, and it's almost, that is something that we absolutely were aware that we would have to encounter just based on the guidelines. Once we increase density and the radius for close contact exposure would be increased. There's nothing that we can do about that. We've put the additional mitigation factors in place in terms of students wearing their masks. We have air purifiers in every room. Some classrooms even have the plastic barriers. We believe that the air purifiers is a better mitigation factor because of the airborne nature of the disease. And so for those strategies, I think that's why we're successful in that we're not seeing the transmission, which is ultimately, that's the biggest goal, to make sure that kids aren't getting sick. But because of the guidelines, we just don't have flexibility around the quarantine. And so once that radius is decreased, anybody who's less than 6 feet has to be under that close contact quarantine. And so I think I've kind of answered the questions around the why, how we got there. I fully understand the stress around close contact quarantines. That part is not within our control. What is in our control is making sure that we can provide the strongest support to not interrupt the continuity of learning for students. And so glad to hear that that person's experience that answered the question, that the teachers are doing a good job with that. Spring break is on all of our minds. It's on the health department's mind, especially with the new variant. Just the concern, we're currently seeing a slight uptick in cases locally and across the nation as well. So it's just about monitoring. And I'll say what I said earlier, in a COVID-19 environment, it has to be a community effort to work to keep safe. And so I know people have COVID fatigue and they're going to travel and that's okay, but just continuing to do it safely, report, like be okay with keeping your child home if you're going international or even monitoring, however that works. We just have to collectively be responsible to not send kids into the environment if they potentially could have been exposed or are sick, and just work together to keep our students and staff safe.
Monica, there was one other question in the chat. I don't know that we answered it, but it was, what about a presumed positive but not confirmed via testing? And I'm not sure what's being asked.
Sorry, that was me. That was actually in regard when you were speaking about the sports teams. You said if one person tests positive, the whole team quarantines. And I was wondering if the same was true for presumed positive, but where there wasn't a test to confirm.
That is correct. So presumed positive would be we would presume positive would either be a rapid antigen test, because those are not diagnostic like a PCR test would be, or what we would consider a probable case, and that is a person that is symptomatic. The quarantine does apply for those cases as well.
Okay, thank you.
And I think we had one more question here. Right?
Josh was introduced, right? Early got here. I don't know. I didn't know if you had already been on the case.
No, he wasn't. We should introduce him.
And so I hope that you already see the value that Josh Meyer is bringing to our district. He is our new Director of School Safety and Security. He's been with us in this interim space since November. Josh, did you come on board? But was officially appointed by the board on Tuesday, and is such just a valuable asset for our students, our staff. He's a parent also, a graduate himself, but a parent of 2 kids in our system. And just so, he's just been so helpful. Just appreciate you, Josh. So just wanted you to know who was answering those questions so thoroughly. I was scared that he wasn't going to agree on Tuesday night after we were dealing with all those close contact quarantines, but he really has been providing so much guidance and support to our nurses to help them support our families through that process.
Thank you, Josh. When we have, as we ease into hopefully more normal times, we will have you back as one of our planned guest speakers, and we'll get to know you even further as far as our group is concerned.
Sure,
Thank you for thanks for being here. And I know we had one more question from Gina here.
Hi, this is actually off of COVID right now, Monica. I was wondering if there's been any more talk about the credit, no credit at the high school level and secondary, if anything else has been done about that.
So the latest update that I had, there was consistency around the learning design teams are looking through that topic. Really looking the F equaling no credit, so it will not impact the GPA. There's pretty much consistency across the 3 schools that is a direction that they would like to take. And now they're looking at that process for D's, C's, and above. What we told them is priority right now was to finalize the in-person return plan. So that's what the team has been working on, but I anticipate that they will re-engage that conversation in the next couple of weeks as we finalize those return plans, and then be able to announce to our community what that looks like for all grades. But just making, I think, some really good progress on the topic, just keeping in mind that with the pandemic. And we've had some interesting situations, like we have a classroom that hadn't had a teacher in it the entire year. We've had a sub the whole year in a classroom, and just learning in a pandemic and in a remote space, especially, with our, our 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, the first time they stepped their foot in the classroom in almost a year was just this beginning in March. And so taking into account all of that, Gina, coming up with really what I hope will be some supportive plans around grading that we'll be able to announce within the next month.
Okay, good. Thank you. Because I currently have a senior, and I know with juniors, just the application scholarships, it's really hurt a lot of kids, the virtual, which it's just, as you know, it's just been really tough for a lot of kids. So I'm glad to hear it's still being discussed. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other last questions or comments? I want to thank everyone here, both our staff and our administrators for being here. Monica, thank you for coming and spending your time and being able to have this very valuable communication. Josh, welcome, and thank you so much for lending us your time and your expertise today. Nick, Brandon, as always, thank you very much for not only like technologically building this bridge so that we can communicate and do this on a regular basis. I want to make one announcement, one more ask of all of our valuable parent reps and parents and caregivers who are here today, as well as those of you who are watching this later on our official YouTube channel. I wanted to make an announcement and an ask. We have 2 more parent council meetings. We've kind of like shifted and added what under normal circumstances, our May meeting is more of like a tour and more of kind of a fun end of the year thing. And I think considering some of the time that we have spent on different perspectives, we're going to have 2 solid regular meetings, both April, which I know is April 15th, a Thursday evening, and I believe it's from 4:30 to 6:30. We have another May meeting also coming, which is also going to be on a slightly later evening time on a Thursday evening. And I just want to have any of our parent reps or those of you who are watching to give us any perspective or details on items or topics that you think would be of value. I know it's one of the great joys of my position and the board's position that we do get to choose topics and speakers on our agenda. But if there are things out there that you believe are worthwhile and are needs of your school community or some of your family's needs, please give us an email or a Facebook message, and we will communicate about those topics and try to get those on our agenda. Again, I want to thank all of our parent reps who are here giving us their valuable time. If you could give us an email that you were in attendance and the school that you are representing, we would greatly appreciate that. It's at parentcouncil@pccsk12.com. And Nick has one more thing to add.
Yeah, we definitely just want to take this opportunity to further inform the community about the vacancy that we do have on the P-CCS Board of Education. And I will share my screen just so the community can know exactly where to find information. Here's our official website, and on the homepage, Board of Education vacancy application process. This walks through the timeline that was discussed at the regular meeting this past Tuesday night and how interested community members could potentially look into filling this vacancy on our Board of Education. We're looking for letters of interest from qualified district residents who would like to learn more about serving on the P-CCS Board of Education. The deadline for submission for these letters of interest is Friday, March 19th, which is a week from today at 4:30 p.m. And those can be sent in via traditional mail, email, or dropped off at the E.J. McClendon Center in downtown Plymouth. So we encourage members of our community to learn more about what it is to be a school board member And if you're interested in either applying or finding out more, all that information is available on this news item on our official district website. So thanks in advance for any interest that you have.
Great. It's a very important position and an important topic. I will reiterate, like I did at the very beginning of the meeting, that we are opening nominations for anyone who would like to nominate themselves or someone else they believe would be interested in serving as one of our P-CCS Parent Council board members. This group is, I would say, for the most part, very light work, but yet very rewarding and very positive outcomes. So if anyone is interested in serving as a board member for this coming fall, we actually have a space open right now as our recording secretary, as Andrea Schultz is serving right now as membership coordinator, as well as our recording secretary, which we greatly appreciate and are indebted to her for. But that would also be a way to kind of try out the spot, as well as get to know the board members. I couldn't ask for better board members, as well as, people to work with. So I would just welcome anybody who thinks that they might be interested. It's a great group to get involved with. So thank you very much for everyone who has given us their time today. And we will see you on April 15th for our next meeting. Thank you very much.